without further ado, let me bring in my guest today. So a lot of you guys are probably already familiar with Status Coup. Jordan Cheriton and Jen Dyes, they've all been on the show before. Also Tina Desiree Berg. And a behind-the-scenes guy doing the camera work is this guy that I'm going to bring in right now. And he was in D.C. this weekend. He covered the Million MAGA March, all the Trump-related protests that were going on in D.C., and he's here to tell us what he saw. Please welcome to the show, for the first time on camera, Mr. John Farina. What's up, John?
Hey, Brian. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on to talk about this.
Absolutely, man. I'm stoked to hear from you and to hear what happened. So, well, let's just start as basic as possible. Give me a summary, man. You were in D.C. this weekend. What are some of the highlights? Where exactly were you? What exactly were you doing?
Well, got to D.C. on Friday. The Million MAGA March was on Saturday, but we got there a day early. We did not get to cover anything that happened, although there were a few things that happened Friday, which led up to what happened on Saturday. But we'll get into that. So the Million MAGA March was held at Freedom Plaza in the downtown DC area. Then they rallied there, easily over 10,000 people. I'm not quite sure what the exact number was. But so they rallied there, and then they eventually marched to the Supreme Court, which they had another rally, a few more speakers, and that's where things kind of heated up between, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and other groups, opposed to the Trump supporters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then things went on into the night, but I guess we'll eventually get up to that.
Well, yeah. So what exactly? I mean, I've been watching your guys' coverage as well as some other people's coverage, but you can feel free to fill in any blanks. They are contesting the election results. They're saying that Trump they're saying it was rigged. They're saying Trump's the president, and. I see a lot of replays of 2016 in a way where it's like you're starting with the conclusion and, you're going to support that conclusion no matter what. I mean, right now it's like Trump's wanting recounts. He's taking it to court, which, okay, if you want to do that, go ahead and we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, it's like, well, you're going to call something rigged. You have to have evidence of that.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
is that your ride? Do you have to go? Do you have to go? What did you do? What did you do, John?
Nothing yet.
All right.
What do you call it? They so basically all they're doing is repeating what they're being told, by Trump, whether it's Twitter or whatever news outlet they watch. So they're just repeating certain things that they're seeing on the internet or on TV. They're not necessarily doing any other research for themselves. And, it's just, it really, like, there's no evidence that they could provide for me. I mean, yeah, there's things where they brought up the craziest thing was dead animals were receiving ballots. And
I saw that on Status Coup. Now, John, I gotta be honest though. Here's the thing though, John. You may say, "Oh, that's crazy. They're claiming dead animals voted." Look, John. Here's the thing though. My cat Lucy. Now she's alive, but I will say she voted 10 times in the 2020 election. She won't tell me how she pulled it off. I still don't know how she did it, but she voted 20 times. And by the way, she did not vote for either of the oligarchy-approved candidates. She wrote in one of her feline comrades, who is such an underground candidate, she wouldn't even tell me their name. I was like, who'd you vote for? She was like, one of my feline comrades. I'm like, well, who? And she's like, you're not ready for this. That's what she said to me.
Yeah,
but a little arrogant on her part, but she was like, you're not ready for this. I was like, all right, Lucy, calm down. She's like, I voted 10 times. I'm like, how'd you do that? And she's like, you've already asked too many questions. Clean my litter box. And I was like, fair enough. So So, just to be fair here, just to be transparent, just to be totally cards on the table, my cat did vote 10 times. But go on with the dead animal interview.
Dead animals, dead people. They brought up the computers changing a couple thousand. I forgot what state it was. I think it was Michigan.
And they switched them back. That did happen. At least to my knowledge, that did happen. And they switched them back already. I mean, they switched them back, I think, before they were tallied.
Oh, they did? Okay. All right.
They switched them back. There was, I mean, referring to the same incident, to my knowledge, it was, some votes were given to Biden that should have been Trump's, and they flipped them back to Trump.
Right.
So,
but even if it's a couple thousand, it's still, how much is he up by now?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if you're going to say there were some shady things that went down in this election, oh, of course there were. There's shady things that go down in every single election. And the fact that these private companies are involved, it is incredibly problematic. And it's problematic during every primary and every general. And it's been that way for years and years. It didn't start with Trump. It's not going to end after Trump. It's still another, it's just another thing. And when it comes to election integrity, we still have a lot of work to do. However, that doesn't mean you can just start with a conclusion whenever you feel like it. And Rania Kalik made this comparison first. I saw it on her Twitter the other day where she's just like, look, in 2016, a bunch of people were like, hey, Russia stole the election from Hillary Clinton with a bunch of internet memes, which, you know what? If internet memes could win elections, our entire government would be represented by Los Angeles comedians. And I don't know if that would be better or worse, but that would be the case. So, but they started with that conclusion. Russia stole it from Hillary Clinton, which it's weird. Apparently, Putin forgot about the 2020 election. I don't know what happened. I guess he just slept through this one. He forgot to get the meme team out. But anyway, he's just like, I thought it was 2021. I don't know. But so that's, you see the same thing happening now where they're starting with the conclusion. It was definitely rigged. It's like, okay, well, what evidence do you have that supports that? Yeah. What evidence? I mean, you can't just bring up some circumstantial anecdotes that sure does highlight the problems of our electoral system. That was the same thing in 2016, in 2018, in 2020. It'll be the same thing in 2022 and 2024. Let's be real. But if you're going to go that second step and say this was rigged, you really have to have a smoking gun, or at least something leading to a smoking gun. As of the recording of this, I've not seen anything like that. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey, if something pops up, I'll listen. But until then, it's like, and this does sound, this does feel a little bit like 2016 to me. Because I remember it's just like, look, if there's some kind of smoking gun that proves that there was, I'm listening. And then, 4 years later, well, what were some of the more outrageous things you saw?
Well, so I've been covering the rallies and protests for probably 6 years now, 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday was the first time when they were in front of the Supreme Court. There was a few thousand. The feeling of them chanting, USA, all the patriotic chants that you could think of.
Did it inspire you?
Did not inspire. Actually, frightened me how how vicious. And let me just say, none of them were wearing masks. Nobody had a mask on. So it wasn't even like I could get close to talk to anybody or even get in that crowd. I had to stay outside of it, like on the Black Lives Matter, Antifa side, in between the riot police, because it was just so packed. Nobody wearing masks. I don't know if you saw the video, the pictures of people spitting and just because they were screaming like vicious and volatile things at the Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters.
Well, what were some of the things they were saying?
Just threatening them and just threats. I don't know specifically what threats, but there were a lot. It was very violent. And so to see that, it kind of, I spoke with other journalists. So after covering the rallies for a couple of years now, I've never seen it that bad, where it was almost like frightening, because you could understand how nationalism, I guess would it be considered nationalism? You see how Hitler and the Nazis or any dictator, rises to power,
sure,
gaining that much of a following and support, and so just that right there kind of like took me back, and I was actually, that was the first time I was actually worried, because I know shit goes on. I'm sorry, can I curse?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can say whatever you want. Yeah.
So I forgot where I was going with this. I'm sorry.
You were talking about nationalism.
Yeah. So, wait, no, I was on a point to get to that.
Okay.
But hold on one second.
Take your time. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's all good. You sound like it's like, correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm projecting, but it's, I'm getting the vibe that this weekend was not a pleasant experience for you.
No, it was, I was taken back. It was a little frightening. Oh, I was actually worried for the direction that we were going in after seeing what I saw that day.
Mm.
Because if they want to protest the election or take it to the court or, express their views, they could do that. But they're not doing it where it's not violent. They're doing it where, like, their idea is to. All right, we'll get to that later. But yeah, there's a lot.
You're building suspense, man.
I know. Because I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot of stuff down that I wanted to speak about.
Okay.
Because a lot of people are wondering how how things led up to where they led up to, because it was a absolute war zone at the end of the night.
How so? Like, we'll describe that. Paint the picture for me.
Well, do you want to talk about the day before leading up into the night, or do you want to just get to?
Well, yeah, no. We'll talk about the day leading up into the night, and how, kind of set up that palette, how it led to what you're going to tell me happened that night. Right.
So I think that scene in front of the Supreme Court really led to spark the what was going to lead up to the night, but it's just really, really worrying to see how many people could be that violent, and just the things that they were saying, the signs, the shirts. I believe one woman was pointing towards us in my direction. I was mostly pressed at that point. Her shirt said, "Talking to you reminds me to clean my gun." Stuff like that.
Oh, clean their gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she was kind of doing this, and it's like,
wow.
And
she didn't know. Well, wait. So she didn't know who you were. You were just a camera guy to her, right?
Yeah, I'm just,
so she's just basically everybody. The entire media is an enemy, which
people. Yeah.
Wow. So you could have been like a pro-Trump outlet for all she knew.
Right, but because I was not on their side.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right, that's why. But I wasn't going to go on their side because they were all jam-packed, with no masks. So I'm not going to put myself in that situation.
When you say they were spitting, do you just mean like they were yelling?
And you can see the droplets coming off them. And
Sure. But you don't mean like they weren't intentionally. They weren't intentionally spitting on people, or did some of that go down too? Okay.
I'm sure it did because there were a lot of things that went on.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't see anything like that. It was just yelling.
No, a lot of taunting, a lot of yelling, a lot of threats. And that's not to say that Black Lives Matter and Antifa weren't doing the same thing, but they were. But they were definitely outnumbered. So
who was out? Black Lives Matter and Antifa were outnumbered.
Outnumbered. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then what transpired into the night then?
Well, let's just say Friday is where the battle started. Okay, because Friday is when the Trump caravan got into DC. They traveled up from wherever Virginia. They stopped in Richmond, Virginia, and then they made their way to Washington DC on Friday. So they went into Black Lives Matter Plaza, which is right in front of the White House. They completely destroyed it. They tore down all the signs, all the posters that they put up. And Black Lives Matter is a very, very sacred place for the people who want to, protest and express, what's been going on the past couple of months. So being that they went into that area and destroyed their property, that's what kind of started. That's what initiated the war, if if you want to call it that. So Friday night, when the Trump supporters and I'm sure there was Proud Boys in there. When they did that on Friday, that's kind of what initiated everything. And they basically a lot of I saw a few residents, like local DC people. One of them actually got punched in my you see it in my video. He was this was in the beginning before they marched to the Supreme Court. Where are you familiar with RevCom? Refuse.
I mean, I feel like I've heard that phrase, but refresh my like tell me what that is though.
They're known as refuse fascism.
Okay.
They usually hold signs Trump Pence out now. So
Okay.
they came with a few people, maybe like 10 people. This was early in the day. They came with a few people, tried to set up banners in the middle of the street near Freedom Plaza, and they quickly got surrounded by Trump supporters and Proud Boys, and taunting them. Now they were setting up to protest, basically. They were pushing this one guy. They would push the wall away eventually, but one of the Proud Boys actually sucker punched this older guy. He was actually a pretty tough guy because he was standing up to them, and they were definitely outnumbered.
The Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, but he wasn't a Black Lives. He wasn't a RevCom. He wasn't a part of their group. He was. I guess he had just met up with the group. He saw that what they were trying to do, and he jumped in. And because I saw.
So he was just a random dude.
He was a local DC guy. I saw him being interviewed by another reporter after he got punched and kind of fucked up. He just said, "I'm a guy from DC, and I don't want these people here in my neighborhood."
Mm-hmm.
And that's he was saying that they come with hatred and violence, and he just didn't want that in his neighborhood. So it was also DC residents and locals coming out and just saying that they don't want this type of hatred in their town. So but that's not. And then so Friday is really what set it off, and then led up into what took place Saturday. And there were videos of Antifa setting fireworks off and taunting the Trump supporters. And just messing with people, maybe messing with elderly people or families,
Antifa was doing that?
Yeah, and just basically taunting them, telling them to get out of here, taking the Trump supporters' flags. And that stuff does happen, but then that led to the Proud Boys. Now this is later in the night. This led to the Proud Boys.
And this is Saturday at this point.
Saturday night, yeah.
Okay.
After the MAGA rally.
Okay.
Proud Boys got together, a couple of hundred of them, I would say, kind of just roamed the streets and beat the shit out of the Antifa, Black Lives Matter people who were taunting the Trump supporters. I'll say DC police did not, they let them do it.
They let them, meaning, so basically there was a violent clash and the DC police just kind of let it happen.
Nowhere to be found.
That's interesting. I mean, well, you've seen time and time again. I think it is safe to say that, I mean, the police, I mean, every single, for instance, you see them, either they are facing Black Lives Matter and Antifa with guns drawn and their backs are turned to the Proud Boys and the white supremacists. You've seen those instances in Oregon where they have done they've done the OK symbol to other Proud Boys and stuff like that. Members of law enforcement have. And even just going back to Charlottesville, going that far back, the way it was set up in Charlottesville, like the way the barriers were made and so forth, it was made for the intention of there's going to be a violent clash and we're going to turn around. Yep. And that's what the cops did. And so time and time again, it's not rocket science. When you have an institution where the manner in which they operate upholds a degree of white supremacy, not only are you going to have white supremacists that want to get involved with that, but you're going to combine that with a concentrated effort by people like David Duke, who for decades now have wanted KKK members to infiltrate law enforcement, and they've done so successfully for decades now. A lot of them have authoritative positions at this point. And this also gets into there's horrible screening and training for police officers. So white supremacists get through all the time. I'm sorry. Being a white supremacist should mean you don't get to be a police officer, because the lie we're told, and it is a lie, but nonetheless, the lie we're told is that a police officer is there to serve and protect. If you have a narrative where you think not all people are worth serving and protecting because you're racist, you shouldn't get to be a police officer. It's that simple. You don't get to be a police officer. Your job is to serve and protect people. You don't think all people should be served and protected, so you don't get to be a police officer. If we were a civilized society, that would be one of the rules. We're not. So instead, you see KKK members getting badges and guns all the time.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So they were just completely missing in this scenario.
Yeah, I mean, they showed up after the fact.
What did they do when they showed up?
Nothing. People, don't get me wrong. People were arrested. They did. I believe. I forgot. I saw a few articles, but people were arrested for firearms, other weapons. There was a video where some Black Lives Matter or Antifa. I did hear that I saw they had knives as well, but that's only because the Proud Boys and other Trump supporters came with weapons as well. But what was the question before?
When the cops showed up, like what kind of happened? I was asking, like, were they missing in general? Did they start any violence that you saw?
Police?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Because that's something else that I think a lot of folks have witnessed that, where the police, they incite the violence, and it's just it's simple.
That's only with Black Lives Matter protesters and Antifa. They won't do that.
Well, yes, you're right. Yes, no, that's you're absolutely right.
Basically, they when I was walking the streets with the Proud Boys, they were saying that we're cleaning up the streets. They were telling police officers, take it easy, take the night off. We got you. We'll take care of this.
Oh wow, yeah, that's what I wanted to know, John.
Yeah.
Why did you leave that part out? That's important.
There's a lot.
Did you get some of this on film? Did you get on film, Proud Boys saying to the police officers, take the night off, we're cleaning up the streets? These are white supremacists saying we're cleaning up the streets. In 2020, the United States, how did the police respond when they said that to them?
I don't think they responded back to them. There wasn't much media
Okay.
A lot of live streamers, but I was actually live streaming.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think the police responded back. But we know that they work hand in hand. But yeah, basically, police did make arrests. Uh, they did step in certain times, but other than that, they just let them roam the streets and try and confront as many Antifa or Black Lives Matter protests as they could.
So at this point on Saturday night, they were not, I mean, they weren't necessarily marching with a message or with like a cause. They were just looking to fight people. Is that fair? Is that what you saw? Or
The Proud Boys?
Yes.
They were marching after Antifa. Their justification was that Antifa was beating elderly people and the shooting off of the fireworks while people were trying to eat. That was their justification for roaming the streets and beating people up and stabbing. Actually, did you hear somebody did get stabbed that night?
I did not hear that. So what happened there?
So I believe the person in his 20s, he was stabbed by a Proud Boy. I know he was in serious condition. I'm not sure what his status is now, but that did happen. Yeah.
But he's alive as of now. Like he's.
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
And I had just got there after there was mace sprayed by one of the Proud Boys. A few of them actually. Mace was sprayed. Weapons were drawn. But I just got there like right after.
Wow. Yeah. What were you expecting when you went there? Like, because I mean, you had to kind of be bracing yourself, but what would you say? Was it worse than you thought? Was it more violent, less violent? Like, how did it like?
It was probably
how was it in relation to your expectations, basically?
More violent than I expected, but I thought police might have had control of that, especially in DC. I thought they would have, but go figure that
they didn't show up.
Antifa and BLM has been they've been clashing with the police for so many months now. Police waited for the opportunity to not have to to just let them be.
Well, yeah, and as you pointed out, if this would have been a Black Lives Matter or Antifa protest, the cops would have been there with guns drawn immediately. They would have been dressed to the nines, ready to dance. If this was a Black Lives Matter or Antifa, and we've all seen. I mean, we've all seen it. You guys have caught that on film. Tina's caught it on film. We've all experienced. If you attended a protest anywhere in the United States, you've experienced that. And a protest for Black Lives Matter, for Antifa, you've experienced that. I experienced it. You walk by and, I mean, I was at the Black Lives Matter protest in Beverly Hills. It felt like a freaking folk festival as far as how peaceful it was. And then you're walking by and you see these cops. And I mean, I took pictures of where they were getting ready. I mean, it was this little area where a bunch of cop cars were parked. It was like this bus parking area for the city. And they're getting decked out and they're getting their vests on and they're getting all this. And it's like, okay, they're looking for trouble. These people we're not looking for trouble. We, the protesters, are not looking for trouble. But these people are looking for freaking trouble. And if they're getting dolled up like that, they're ready to crack heads and they're going to. Yeah. And that's what happened. All of a sudden, I mean, they strategically placed all these cop cars around the protesters. All these empty cop cars were just placed there, hoping somebody would do something. And I mean, I've said this on the show before. People were throwing stuff. There were some people that threw stuff at the cop, like pebbles and stuff like that. And other people told them not to do it. Other people were like, don't do that. Don't you do that, they're going to come cracking heads. Don't do it. That's what they want you to do. Don't do it. And then those people stopped. That's what I witnessed with my own two freaking eyes. And then all of a sudden, no one knows where. All of a sudden, there's some random cop car that looked like this retired police car from like 1985. And all of a sudden, this random police car that has all this spray paint all over it is just randomly on fire. So, gee, how did that happen? I wasn't born yesterday. I mean, come on. It's like, what's the like? So it's like they incite the violence when it comes to Black Lives Matter and Antifa, they being the police. And when it's actual like white supremacists, they just don't even bother showing up. They're not even present. Because if those guys go around cracking heads, they're fine with that.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen them protect, the Trump supporters and the Proud Boys. I've seen them protect like the police, and certain times where they were outnumbered, when it was the opposite.
Sure.
So I did not see the police protect anybody in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen, on video or firsthand or otherwise, I've never seen a police officer intervene on behalf of Black Lives Matter or Antifa. I mean, I've seen them break some stuff up, like different sides clashing, be it Trump supporters or Black Lives Matter with each other. I've seen them break stuff up, but I've never seen them just intervene on the behalf of. I've never seen that happen, and right. I doubt I ever will.
Yeah, no, it won't happen.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say there is such a thing as the police culture, which needs to be dismantled.
That's the thing. So many people miss the mark when you have this cop where they're like, "Well, my neighbor's a cop and he's a nice guy," or this. It's like that's irrelevant because we're not talking about like any individual. We're talking about a system. We're talking about a system that's rotten to its core. And saying like when there's desperate systemic change needed, that's like there's an E. coli outbreak and you take one shred of lettuce and you're like, this shred of lettuce is good. It doesn't matter. It's a systemic disease. Right. And that's what law enforcement is. It's a systemic disease. And if so many of these quote unquote good cops did exist, by the way, why aren't they doing anything about the bad ones? I'll tell you why. Because of the system itself, not many of those good cops exist. And if they do exist, they're weeded out pretty quickly, virtually 100% of the time. And if they do exist, well, they're not necessarily that great because they're not doing anything about the system they're a part of.
Right.
So, I don't have time for this bullshit apologist. It's just red herrings at this point. Whenever someone's like, "Oh, not all cops are bad," just stop talking. Just stop talking, because you have the comprehension of a 6-year-old, and the adults are trying to speak. Not all cops. Fuck you. Fuck you. Not you, John. You know it.
I mean, I think that's where we're seeing the divide. It's just two different realities between these people, two different worlds. Where like Black Lives Matter and Antifa want the message to be heard and understood, and where Trump supporters and the right side, they just want to squash them. They don't want to hear them. They don't want to listen. They don't want to understand.
Well, you see a lot of by the book propaganda happening in our society. And by the way, this did not start with Trump, and this will not end when Trump's gone. Right. This goes far beyond Trump. So, when people are making it out like, this started in 2017, it didn't. It didn't. Wow. Trump is the result of all this. Trump's the result. Our system brought us to this point. And it's a system where you want to turn people against their neighbor so that they don't look at the oligarchy that's screwing them. And you have a complicit media that's happy to do this. You have a complicit corporate media that's happy to blame the immigrant instead of blaming capitalism. to, blame your neighbor, blame radical anarchists on a bus somewhere instead of blaming Wall Street and the oligarchy. Yeah. That's what they want, and that's what they've done. And because of that, it's led to something like a Donald Trump. And by the way, it will lead to more Trumps, especially since, hey, we replaced the neo-fascist. What did we replace him with? A neocon. What does a neocon lead to? A freaking neo-fascist. So this is a huge systemic disease that Trump did not invent. He was just a willing player in. And the only reason he's possible is because of this systemic disease in the first place.
He's also fueling the fire.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying he's not terrible. Of course he is. But, the system is rotten to its core is what I'm saying. And it goes far beyond him.
Right. He's making it okay for these things to come out, and all these racists and all these people who have these thoughts, they're coming out from, they're hiding and they're saying what they want to say and what's on their mind, because the president of the United States is doing the same thing. So
yeah, well, and it's because the reason they're susceptible to that message, though, is because they're in desperation a lot of the times. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, I hate to make the Hitler analogy because that is such a cliche in our society, but it is the same thing that, Goebbels, and it's the same formula. Yeah. You take people who are desperate, who have been crushed economically, and you create a fake enemy for them to hate. And if they're desperate enough and they've been crushed by the economy, so and a lot of times they haven't had opportunities for a good education, they haven't had opportunities to be exposed to different types of ideas. So instead, they're exposed to very toxic ideas, and they're susceptible to it. Right. I mean, it's the same formula, and it's the same thing that happened in Germany and Nazi Germany. It's the same thing that's happening here now, and it's happened many, many times throughout history. It's the same thing Mussolini did. You take a desperate populace who is being crushed by people way more powerful than them, and you convince them that the enemy is their neighbor. Mm-hmm. And then you just kind of coast on that if you're the powerful elite, which, things are looking great for Wall Street right now. Things are looking great for the oligarchy right now. They are doing just fine. Billionaires got how much richer throughout this pandemic?
Right.
Jeff Bezos is on his way to becoming a trillionaire while people are in line for food all of the Great Depression, and they're fine with all this. And then they want to make you entertain the fantasy that there's some kind of an ally just because some of them don't get along with Donald Trump. And why don't they get along with Donald Trump? Is it because Donald Trump is some narcissist, megalomaniacal plutocrat? No, because they're that too. It's because they're having a measuring contest with them. And you, the pleb, are supposed to pick your fucking plutocrat. Well, guess what? I'm not picking my plutocrat because I know that all of them are the freaking problem.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. John, don't pick your plutocrat.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your